Hello and welcome to lesson 6 of authentic networking. I have a question for you today. As we get started, are you ready to advance your success? Are you ready to advance your success while improving your relationships? Because it is possible. It is possible to build relationships, become the best version of you, feel the authentic version of you while networking, building relationships, building community, and co creating success together. Yeah. That's a lot, but it can be done. And that is exactly what we are covering and talking about within authentic networking. This is a collaboration over competition approach to building relationships and our networking through the co creation of success. Welcome. Hello. Thanks for joining me today. And I am just loving as we are continuing to roll and develop and the conversations that it is bringing up. So, as I dive in today, these are short sessions for you to take and implement. There are action steps within each one of these lessons. And we're doing this on a weekly basis so that you have time to implement this. Now, we really could be doing these daily and we could mega up our challenges, but I want to give you the time and space because I understand that as we are changing how we are participating in life with relationships and networking and advancing our career, that there are some mindset shifts that come along with that. And so as we try to implement these things, we might have a lot of hesitation and then rework the mindset and then attempt. And it's okay. Failure is not a thing here. Failing is not a thing. So it's only learning from that and then pivoting or advancing from there. All right. Today we're talking about communication, specifically in your communication skills and really looking at your overall communication. So when I go into an organization and we do a communications assessment, the first thing that we want to look at is what are all of the communication channels that are currently being used versus what is available. So I ask you, and you might not do it right now if you're driving or doing something else, but to think about this and to write this down now or later. What are the communication methods that you are currently using to communicate with your network or building a network to communicate with your people or the people that you want to be your people? Are you using maybe 2 or 3 methods? Maybe you're like, I just use Facebook Messenger, maybe LinkedIn Messenger, and then I got my phone, and that is it. Are you regularly using email? Are you using different channels, social media channels? Are you having in-person meetings? Do you have multiple groups of in-person meetings that you have access to? So then we're talking about communities. We can start to look at your Facebook groups or your LinkedIn groups. And we can start to make this list on one side, what I'm actually utilizing. On the other side, like what is really available to me that I might not be using on the regular. And I recommend doing this because you might find, is what I'm doing working efficiently? Are the people that I want to meet in these spaces? How's my communication overall? So if you were going to rate yourself currently on your communication levels, how you communicate maybe to friends and family, not just our work and our career, because it's a holistic approach. How we approach one thing is typically how we approach everything. And as we do this, we really need to take an assessment. So take an assessment right now, just off the top of your head, if you were going to rate your current communication skills, and this might be in relation to how much do you feel supported? How much do you feel like you provide support as well, having a community and having relationships? And then that communication is part of it. So you might have 2 different rankings that might be the same, but go ahead and give yourself a shout out. I'll even say mine's not perfect. This is always something that I'm always working on too. So, things that you all might not know about me is I wasn't always great at this. And I have these ebbs and flows of when I do better because I tend to revert back to my old programming. My old programming, you all, seriously, I was the kid that came home from school. I would check out a book from the library at school and I would go and I would sit in my little recliner in the corner of my bedroom and I would read a small little book every single day. Yes, socializing was not my norm. That was not my comfort area. My comfort area is in a book. But what I kept finding is I loved all these amazing relationships that were happening in these books. And I found that I had a lot to say. And thankfully, my stepmom, she pushed me to go into beauty pageants and to give speeches on stage. And I would write these speeches and rehearse these speeches. And finally, I think it was my third competition that I finally got in the top 5 for my speech. And I was so excited and I felt so validated that people were hearing my message. And I look back now, that 14, 15-year-old version of me actually wrote a speech talking about how when we sit and imagine ourselves robbing a bank when we're watching all of these TV shows, that we have now rehearsed this in our mind. And so I started out with a question of, have you ever thought about robbing a bank? And most people are like, oh, no, I would never say that. And I was like, well, actually, you probably have. If you've watched any of these movies and you've had these conversations, you've thought about it. And so those thoughts have been inserted into your mind. And I started talking about what at the time I did not realize was the subconscious mind. Pretty cool, right? So I was reflecting on that this morning. So thinking about the things that like, what is our comfort zone? We need to be aware of that so that we know when we are reverting back to our comfort zone. Now, I am not saying that you need to be putting yourself out there 24/7, that you need to be this hyper, super connector at all times. We also need those times to go within, to reflect. So please know that as I say these things, I'm not asking you to be on at all times, but rather, can we be present at all times? Can we be fully in it with full intention as we participate and show up? So the title Authentic Networking, it's important for us to really talk about what this word authentic means, and we'll talk about it several times today as we go throughout this, because we're going to talk about this one method, and I'm going to look at it's called Johari method. And is it the Johari window? Sorry, the Johari window. And essentially this is mirroring. If you've ever taken a course on body language and how to sit with someone and how to better relate with someone, this is something that you've probably heard before. If not, stay with me. All right, so the Johari is essentially mimicking and mirroring, and how we make other people feel comfortable is by mimicking the tone, the energy level, and the body language. Now, the first thought, and I'm sure a question that's going to come to mind is, well, wait a minute. How are we supposed to be our authentic self if we're having to force ourselves to mimic this person that we're talking to in order to improve our communication? Well, it's about mannerisms, and it's not shifting or being fake, but rather it's creating this icebreaker, so to speak, through body language that allows us to feel comfortable. You're meeting someone where they're at, and then you are expanding from there. So let me explain. If someone is sitting and they're talking kind of slow or low, and they've got their arms crossed and they're kind of slouched, does that mean that you should sit there and you should be all up on them? No, because that is actually going to make them feel like you are not relatable. So In that instance, you might become a little bit more relaxed just to help them feel comfortable so that you can connect and relate. Now, there's this beautiful dance that happens with conversational body language that you can begin to open up once that connection is made and that mirroring is established. And then as you begin to unfold your hands, it's this slow invitation for them to start opening up as well. Now, the same thing happens on the other end of the spectrum, where if someone is bold and they're confident and they're standing there and you're the one that's super timid, they are not going to take you as serious because they are not going to see you as their equal. This is just how the mind works. So what we can do is we can then sit our posture up a little bit taller, that we can speak a little more clearer. And we would want to mimic that person to a certain degree so that, again, that we can create this icebreaker. It's no different than when you go up at a networking event and you're like, oh, weather out there, huh? And you're creating this icebreaker that's not probably your authentic conversation, but we're doing it just to create that connection. And then the dance of the conversation can start to unfold. So that's where I want to come back to this word authentic. Authentic means that we're not pretending to be something we're not. But at the same time, if we are mimicking or mirroring, and we're like, but I never sit up that tall. Well, it depends on the people that you want to be associated with and the person that you want to become. Not in a sense of thinking that you are less than, but from a sense of I have goals and this is the person that I want to be authentically from my heart, and not just, oh yeah, I want to be like them. So making sure that it is coming from an authentic space. Now, if we come back to our communication channels and we look at, okay, now I'm mimicking and mirroring someone, and when I'm in person, so in-person events, but we can also do this on Zoom as well. So I always see this a lot when I have a Zoom call and I just came off of videoing, so I've got my hair and makeup done and I get on the Zoom call and then they come on and they're like, oh my gosh, I feel bad because you're all fixed up and I'm not. And I'm like, don't worry. Don't worry, just be you. Don't apologize for being you. This is so important. Do not apologize because you're not fixed up the right way or that you're not matching that person. You don't have to apologize. Just be you and own it. Confidence shines like nothing else. All right. So please know that. Don't apologize. Just be you. No one knows the difference if that is your norm or not your norm. All right. Okay. Now, if we go into our forms of communication, as we talked about last week, we did talk about that digital networking, and we're also going to expand into that a little bit more. We're also talking about our physical meetings and interactions, and combining those two, we create our stages through the digital world. We create the stages so that we open up the opportunities so that we have the physical stages in the real life too. If it wasn't for me putting myself out there and teaching trainings, when I get to the in-person networking and I talk about what I've been teaching about, and people go, oh, would you want to come and do a speech about that? Yes, I would love to. And I've already worked it out. I've already made this connection. I've already put myself out there and I've already been practicing by being here. So creating your stage, please know, and gosh, please go back and look. If you go into the Collaboration Over Competition Facebook group and you look in the guide section and you see all of these videos, you'll see from video 1 to video 6. And you'll see the confidence that was worked out. You can see the elevation of how they occurred. Practice, practice, practice. The only way we get better is through, type it in there, practice. Practice equals progress. perfection is only momentarily. So practice makes progress. Practice makes progress. All right. How we continue to practice with our vocals is not only like, hey guys, throw yourself out there, gals, throw yourself out there, start going lives today. It doesn't have to be that much of a plunge. It can also be you writing your things out and speaking it out loud in your office, at home, in the mirror, and just playing with that. But ultimately, when we skip over our words, when we lack the clarity of what we want to say, requires practice in defining that so that we have the clarity. That when we speak from the heart, it comes out so much different versus so many of us are speaking from our mind. Right? We go to a networking event, we're all in our head and we're thinking, am I good enough? Am I doing this right? What are they going to think of me? That's all from our head. But our heart, and coming in with the mission, coming in with our heart desired big dreams that we're going after, when we connect with people from a heart level, this authentic level, the relationships go differently. And again, we have to understand what is our default method. And our default methods can be things that we did as a child, as a teen. It can be the things that we learned from the adults in our life as a child. So if you saw, your parents networking or not networking, those can also be your norms. And so we have to surround ourselves with people who we want to be our new norms. We get to choose, and we surround ourselves with that so that we can learn from that. Another fun fact. I was not always the health person that I am today. I ended up pursuing sports medicine and had all of these health and wellness certifications. I love health now. But growing up, I didn't really drink water. Growing up, we ate a ton of red meat. Growing up, we had vegetables, and I did like vegetables, but we also ate a lot of burgers, and we didn't really learn how to cook other than like Thanksgiving meals. And as I became an adult, as I surrounded myself and I put myself in the settings with people who had healthy habits, who people were cooking and doing these things, that shift began to happen for me because I was seeing people where it was very natural for them. So when we talk about authentic networking, you can use this if you are on a health journey. You can use this if you're on a career advancement journey. You can use this as an entrepreneur. You can use this in whichever field that you're in. This is applicable because it is holistic. We are talking about one, behavior change. Two, we're talking about relationships and enhancing those. So as we are setting ourselves up to, hopefully you want to become the industry expert in something, I highly recommend it. It's a beautiful thing. It's a great journey to be on. And whether you're in a career and you're looking for advancement, you want to become an industry expert in a specific area. If you're an entrepreneur, if you are looking to become an expert in health and wellness even, surround yourself with those people. Begin to create your network. And so if you're going to step up and you want to be an industry leader, you have to take the stage. Taking the stage can start with dipping your toe in to just participate in conversations, but we don't just one time, once a week even, participate in conversations. It needs to be a consistent habit. So if you'd like to participate in conversations, it can be on LinkedIn. It can be on Facebook. It can be in Facebook groups. But copy those links, save them in your notepad, because you want to keep going back to them over and over. As I'm creating new habits, I am a big fan, if you all have not heard yet, I am a big fan of Google Calendar because it has all of these notifications and reminders, and you can put your tasks on there. You all might have another software program that does that too. That's totally fine. But I can put on there, I can schedule something and I can make it where I'm not busy. It's just a reminder, and I can color code them and remind myself and create the new habit that every Tuesday at 10 o'clock, I'm going to be providing authentic networking training. And so every Monday at X time, I need to prepare for that lesson and putting those times on my schedule so that I can prepare for those. Checking in with the Facebook group to comment. I have a little notification, a reminder that I can check off once I've done that. A new behavior is essentially what we're starting. And so we have to be extremely intentional so that it can be authentic. But being extremely intentional about those new behaviors. So let's pause for just a moment and talk about behaviors. To start a new behavior, it's going to work best if you link it to an existing behavior. However, if you don't have an existing behavior to link it to, then we do need those reminders. But not only do we need those reminders, we need those consistent reminders of why we are doing it just as much as, hey, here's the reminder to do it. This is why coaching works so great, because you have that accountability session to really dive into the why am I doing this? Why is it important? And if you don't do that deep value work and really that mindset work of like instilling it into yourself, it's going to be harder to accomplish. So just side note. All right, diving back in. So we talked about first, as we first came on, we were talking about listing out your communication channels that you're currently using versus what all is available to you. As we look at going in person more and practicing talking about ourselves, you might need to practice your pitch, and I highly recommend it to practice your pitch before you go in person, and not just to write it out and say it in your head, but to verbally say it and to repeat it over and over. The mind learns through repetition. The mind learns through repetition. All right. So doing that. And then as you're talking to people, to become aware of this mimicking so that you can create this dance of conversation that is building connection. Now, if you're doing that, you're also going to be communicating on the virtual world as well, because if we meet someone in person, it's a great way to follow up with them, to stay front of mind. In order to stay front of mind, it's not just following them and watching everything they're posting, but it's also posting content from yourself as well. Learn how to do that. And if you need help, we do have the 7-day social media challenge, or we can work together to make that happen as well. All right. So practice speaking. Another really important thing is to grow your vocabulary. I don't think you'll be surprised now hearing my story of how much I love books, but read more, and not just read the easy stuff, read stuff that has new vocabulary in it, or you can practice learning a new word every day or every other day. And practice putting it into implementation, because as we expand our vocabulary, as we practice reading words and sentences, we start to form through that repetition, through that learning, through that training of our mind, we learn which sentences are best. So surround yourself on all platforms, whether it be a book, whether it be, I'm more of like, I like the paper books. Like you all feel me, right? Like I used to go to the bookstore. Oh, I love bookstores. It's my happy place. That was what I would do every year for my birthday. My birthday is January 2nd, so like nothing to do on that day. So I would just go to the bookstore with a coffee and sit all day. Loved it. Anywho, you ever want to buy me something? Notebooks, nice pencils and pens, and notebooks, lots of notebooks, because I'll buy all the other books. All right. So as we make these connections, we practice. Now, as we practice, you can develop the gift of gab. You can develop conversational fluency. And in fact, one study that was done that showed the success of people who did their MBA was not their grades, was not the projects that they did. The success of how they used their MBA was actually how they were able to communicate. So, communication and being able to talk to the people that you need to have the conversations to get you in the room or keep you in the room, that is going to propel your success so much more than anything else. And yes, we need to know the stuff, but just knowing the stuff is not enough. The person who can talk about what they know or have conversations with those other people are going to be the ones that are most successful. But what do you do if you are in a room and you're with someone that never gives you the opportunity to speak? They are stealing the spotlight. Do you compete with them and try to outwit them or move forward with that conversation? What do? You actually learn to listen. So, learning to listen is definitely that other aspect within communication and asking amazing questions. We come back to people remember you based on how you make them feel. If you were trying to compete with them in a conversation, they're going to remember you for competition, not collaboration. So, in order to create that collaborative feeling, we would ask questions, we would allow them to shine, and we would help them shine. I know that seems a little backwards than what we might have been taught to do in the past, but we would actually start to ask questions. People love to talk about themselves. Have you noticed this? So if someone's talking about their baby or their kids or the vacation, instead of like rolling your eyes and trying to change the subject, actually lean into that. Ask them questions and listen attentively so that you remember these things, so that next time you see them, you can ask them how their kid's doing or the new dog is doing, or, have they planned any new vacations yet? We're working on co-collaboration, co-creation of success. We are working on helping people feel better by building relationships, and relationships go two ways. And we cannot ever control what the other person does, says, listens, or not, but we can control ourselves. And so we want to listen twice as much as we speak, of course, but we also want to make sure that we're not forgetting to speak, that we're not just reverting to listening. Make sure that you have a say in the conversation. And that might be a gradual build up. Maybe it's read more so that you have something to talk about, so that you can talk about the thing that you read. Or it might be, hey, I was just at this event. They were having conversations around this. I'm going to go read and do some research so next time I can participate in the conversation more. Nothing is a failure. Everything is a learning experience. So allowing yourself to take the takeaways that you learned from the last networking and adjust, pivot, and apply so that you can continue to advance. All right. So coming back to that, communication, speech, the best thing that we can do for any of us that are parents and you really want to enhance this with your kids is theater. I cannot say that enough. Getting them to memorize scripts and be on stage and learning projection and learning confidence and learning to be okay in their own skin. I don't think we talk about that enough in our culture, the importance of making your kids uncomfortable and getting them to practice. But if we're going to do that for our kids, we also need to do it for ourselves. Improv classes are a beautiful thing. Actually, we should totally do that. Let's all go to some improv classes together. Toastmasters is another thing where there's some improv talking that happens on that. Get better at storytelling. Try to tell a story and improve that. So allow yourself to practice communication, storytelling, talking. These are all skills that can be acquired. Yes, some people are just born with that gift. Some people had parents that really pushed them and molded them in that area, but it's never too late. So you can do this too. Now, as we move forward, I'm going to invite you to create dialogue. Choose something that you're going to work on this week. Whether you are going to have, Holly said the Wow Factor Collective has an improv class this Wednesday. Okay, fantastic. All right, so improv is an amazing thing. And this week I'm inviting you to create dialogue, to go have some conversations, put yourself in some conversations, whether you need to dip your toe in and do online first, or if you're like, okay, I need to rip the Band-Aid off and go in person first. Maybe you look up 20 questions to ask people, and you have those questions ready. Questions are a great way so that you don't have to do all the talking, but you can still have a voice. So whether you want to have something to talk about, or if you want to do some improv with people, that's fun too. Level 2 version of that is I'm going to ask you to go invite people to a coffee chat and get a coffee chat on your books, 1 per week for the next 6 weeks, since today's lesson 6. Get at least 1 coffee chat on your books for each week. Now, if you already have 1 on each week, then make it 3. But challenge yourself to have more conversation and be strategic. Think about people that you want to talk about, people that you want to talk with, people that have something you want to talk about, or you can pick their mind. You can just network with them, but really consider when you're creating your network. Networking is what we do to go out and collect people that are going to be in our network. So if you had a network of 12 people, who are the 12 people that you can refer people out to and they can refer people to you? Create your collective, your network of the people who you can form relationships with. And if you don't have those people yet, then go find them. If you have them, keep connecting with them. Don't let them fall off. And you can also create a second tier and a third tier of this network as well. All right, so I will see you next week. Next week, we begin diving in a little deeper. So this was the foundational portion of this training. Next week, we will dive into building our relationship action plan. It's going to be fun. All right, I will see you then. Thank you. Thank you for being here.